Patty. Starts with a G. Grigsby. I appreciated what you said last week, and I thought to myself, there's a newcomer I haven't met yet. And you must be with Patty. What's your name? Dalton? Hi, Dalton. My name's Doug. Sorry I am booming as though in a godly voice, but, you know, kind of fits. All right, so here's what I'm doing. I'm stretching for time, waiting for Heather to show up. I don't know where she is. There she is. All right. So I'll run the slides for you, all right?
Good morning and welcome to Common Thread. And welcome to Ordinary Sunday. We've lost track. Post-Lent is a confusing season. But good morning, welcome to Common Thread. It is a beautiful day wherever we are in the liturgical cycle. So we're glad to see you and that the doors are open. And a special welcome to all newcomers. Whether you're here for the first time or you've been coming for a few weeks or a few months, if you are here, you belong. Because we are a church that seeks to find support and companionship around questions instead of answers in the spiritual life, you newcomers, guests, visitors are our life's blood. You keep us practiced in the art of welcoming the stranger. So if you would like to receive our welcome email, please use the link or the QR code, and it will give you everything you need to make your way into our community. We are also a community that believes the spiritual journey requires mutual support and companionship. And if you could use some of that these days, please reach out. Or just find the listener at the library after the service. The listener today is Diane Beth. So our listeners are trained through the self-awareness practice. They are waiting for you at the library down the hall if you would like to just have a shoulder to lean on, someone to listen, or if you would like to be led deeper into the self-awareness practice, we have found that to be a very useful tool. So we are here, ready to sit together through dark times as well as beautiful days like today. Again, welcome. We're so glad to be together, and let us affirm, as we do every week, the nature of our commitment to one another. If you are here, you belong.
If you are here, you belong.
We are, every one of us, carriers of the inner light.
We are, every one of us, carriers of the inner light.
We are, every one of us, carriers of divine breath. And so I invite you to stand, to greet one another, and to pass the peace.
And as you're being seated, hello, Rebecca. So during What Are You Thinking last week, there was a comment. I found it very helpful. The comment was, Sue, that was a great way to frame or reframe Easter. You put into words thoughts that I've had that I hadn't been able to put into words. Thank you. And I'm going to dinner later today, that was last Sunday for Easter, with people who hold a very different view. I'm going to dinner with people for whom this would be a very difficult lesson. And I want to make sure, the comment said, that we honor those people and resist the tendency to be in any way dismissive or demeaning. And when I heard that comment, I quickly sent a text and said, good job, because that is the focus of our community. That's the focus of today's lesson, and it's actually the only posture that will help us move forward in all of the trouble spots that we as a nation face and increasingly globally face. So, yes to rethinking Easter, and a whole lot more than just Easter. Yes to reimagining, and yes to respecting, and yes to honoring. That's what we aspire to in our community. Now, of course, as you'll hear later in the lesson, we often come up short in that effort, and there's really good reasons, and the reasons are kind of wired into our brains, the way our neurons work. But it is our aspiration, it is possible, it is doable, and it is our aspiration. And one of the practices that helps us best, we borrowed from the Buddhist tradition. It's called the loving kindness meditation. I'm going to lead us through it together this morning, but I also hope that you will use it as part of your regular practice, because it starts with a prayer. May they, or may I, be free of harm and danger, free of suffering or distress, healthy and strong, and live in this world with peace and joy and well-being. And that prayer focuses our internal posture. It helps us move our souls to a different place. So let's read it aloud together. We'll use the they, okay? So may they, together. All right, we'll start now. You ready? May they be free of harm and danger, be free of suffering or distress, be free, healthy and strong, and live in this world with peace and joy and well-being. Which again is for them, but really is cultivating in us more access to love, more access to compassion, more access to goodwill. So let's, as we do, find a comfortable place in our bodies. Often helps if we put our weight on our vertebrae instead of on our muscles, so sitting up straight. Taking a breath, remembering the relaxation posture that we've built into our bodies, doing this many times before. In and out. Letting go of tension, letting go of the chattering of our minds as we breathe out. Take a few moments in, relaxing out. And for each of the times that we use this prayer, see if it happens that someone will come to your mind without you having to work at it, without you trying. See if someone will just come from inside to your conscious awareness. Take a moment and see if someone will come to your mind first who has shown you love and kindness. And if nobody comes to your mind unbidden, do a quick inventory. Think about your youth. Think about the days you're living now. Take a moment to go over in your mind your places where you go, where you live your life. Someone who has shown you love and kindness. And as we practice this prayer, see if you can think the prayer, but also see if you can feel the prayer. I'll speak it, and as I do, you repeat in your mind, looking for that place within you where you have love, that place inside you where you have kindness. So together, holding in mind the person who has shown you love and kindness, a breath in and out. I'll say each part of the prayer and you repeat it in your mind. May they be free of harm and danger. May they be free of suffering or distress. May they be healthy and strong and live in this world with peace and joy and well-being. Now notice where within yourself you were able to access love and kindness, because in a moment we're going to want to go to that same place. Now see if someone comes to mind toward whom you feel neutral. Maybe someone at work, your neighborhood, an acquaintance. See if they come to mind. And again, if not, do a quick inventory of your places in your days. And picturing their face, holding them in your mind. May they be free of harm and danger. Free of suffering or distress. Healthy and strong. And live in this world with peace and joy and well-being. The meditation is an invitation to stretch ourselves, to find within ourselves and then expand love and kindness. See if you can find that place again within yourself. And now the hardest one, obviously. See if you can allow someone to come to mind with whom you have difficulty. And if they don't come to mind, a quick inventory. And visualizing their face. Let's try. Stretch ourselves. Try and find a place where we do carry love or even kindness. May they be free of harm and danger, free of suffering or distress, healthy and strong, live in this world with peace and joy and well-being. Another breath. And finally, allow to come to mind some point where you have not been pleased with yourself. May I as well be free of harm and danger. Free of suffering or distress. Healthy and strong. And live in this world with peace and joy and well-being. Continue breathing for a few moments, holding to that place within where we do. It's there. We carry love. We carry compassion, and we carry kindness. A few more breaths. Breath in and out, and amen. To which you will say, amen. Well, good morning again. And why don't you, without standing up, just turn to somebody nearby you and say good morning, affirming they are also carriers of the light. Thank you. This is like the old days, the Doug Show. All right, some places that you can connect in the community. Today, what are you thinking on Zoom? Those of you who are online, if you're live, we'd love to have you. Also, Braver Angels is going to happen right down the hallway. Now, here's the thing about Braver Angels. We need a quorum, and for that quorum, we need 6 more people. And so here's the thing. You're going to regret not having gone down the hall once you hear this lesson. You're going to be thinking to yourself, boy, I'm really motivated now. I really want to go. Unfortunately, we have to have a count before you get to hear this lesson because we also have to order pizza. So here's the thing. Just imagine yourself keenly motivated because it's good for your soul and it's good for the world to go practice depolarizing within. It's only 90 minutes. You just walk down the hall. You do one of the most important things that we can do in our society. And did I mention pizza and free childcare? My goodness, why would you not want to? All right, I need 6 people. Come on, 6 people. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's now put the hands back down. Now I need to do something different. I need a finger count because we have to count children in this because we're going to figure out how much pizza. You ready? So fingers up. So, pardon? Humans. Humans. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No more pizza. Okay. All right. Slices. Oh, okay. Now let's go slices. Put up. Oh, come on. Oh, come on, Patty. You at least have 2 slices. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. And then for the, however many it's going to for that. All right. Very good. Thank you so much. Let's see what else is going on today. Brew Crew, Linwood Brewing, 4 o'clock on the 13th, next Saturday. Pride Life Expo. Artsy Group is also meeting that day. Next Sunday is Centric Prayer before church and after church, the drop-in self-awareness. On the 27th, there's going to be was that the one that was up before? Doesn't matter. Okay, good. There's going to be an on-campus spiritual practices retreat, self-awareness, and contemplative practices. These practices are critical for human growth and development, critical for moving into the next stage of our growth frontier. So I really hope you'll attend. One of the practices also is the serving practices. And Sue told me that after lunch at the spiritual practices retreat, a group's going to be going to the service practices to help out with the food bank. So I hope you'll do one, maybe even do both. Good things to be doing for your soul. And as always, I just buzz through these things quickly. So for you to find out the where and the how and the what, 3 places to go. You can go to the app, you can go to open the Thursday email, or you can just always go to the front page of the website. A quick note. Sue and Jen have been hard at work trying to make it more easy for people to access all the things that we do for health and well-being of our souls. So you will see that on the front page of the app, of the website, there's a new box. You'll also see that there's a whole new section. And this is the place that we invite people to do things today that we can do. That if we will do, will make it possible tomorrow to do things that we cannot yet do. That's the whole point of spiritual practice, spiritual training. This is what we do to practice soul care and well-being. So you'll see the link, you'll see the stuff on the website. Really do check it out. Even if you don't end up using the things, please go check it out, because it's important for you to know what's going on in the community, because you might say to someone someday, oh, all you have to do is go here and you will find this and this and this. So please do that. This is how so many people are hard at work making ours a healthier community. I ask folks for stories all the time about how their investment in Common Thread has created a good return, and I wrote down this one, or actually somebody emailed it to me, but I didn't, when I copied and pasted it, I didn't find out who did it. So it has to be, you'll be able to figure out from context, somebody on our steering team, but the story went like this. I knew things were not going well, this person wrote me, when Doug said in a meeting, "Fuck you and the horse you rode in on." Now, I remember that meeting, and I thought I was being funny. That's what I thought I was doing. But I also know at the time I was under a lot of stress. I was compressing too much to do in too little time. I was creating these core values, consistent practices, so that we could transmit our community to future leadership, and it was a lot. And so, yes, I was joking, but also maybe not. So the storyteller wrote, "We insisted Doug sit down and get the stuff out of his head that he's been working on, help us all see it, and then once we saw it, we realized there really was a lot, and they're right, there was really a lot. That was a tough year. But then we went to work, reorganizing our community so that we could all work on building healthy community together, and yeah, that happened, and I am so glad that it did. But here's what happened. Community owned community. A community where we can pull one another aside, even the founder, and say, dude, this is not working. Let me stand with you. And that did happen, but here's what I know. That happens all the time. It happens not just for me, it happens for us many, many times. And when we create and live in that kind of community where we feel a mutual obligation to one another, a mutual commitment to one another, in that environment, human beings thrive, human beings are changed. And that's what we are investing in when we invest our time and our energy and our love and our dollars. And there is good return when we invest in spiritual community. So we all give online now. You can use the QR code or go to the top of our website. Please do that. Angie's going to give us an update on what's going on with our bylaws and our organizing structure. You tell me when you're ready for your slide. Yep, that's the one, I'm sorry.
Hey, morning, everybody. All right. I have a few things to tell you. The first one might be of the most interest. No one knows what I'm about to say, including myself, okay? You might, thinking about the future of our governmental or bylaw structure at this church, assume that there's a little, power center of people who have their egos at work and are trying to micromanage this transition, and that's not true. It's not big enough or true enough to be about this community, right? So no one knows what I'm going to say about this, and including myself. So I decided to let the Spirit move me in this process because I have a lot of faith in this community. We're going to make this transition to a new way of making decisions, and it's going to be fine. So we don't have to micromanage it. We don't have to prepare. We don't have to read off a script, and no one's telling me or anyone how it's going to be. Okay, that's the most important thing. And also, I'm very honored that I get to stand in front of you and they let me have this microphone to say what's on my heart about this process, because I'm excited about this process. And at the same time, I know we're going to work together to make it great. I used to be a teacher, and so one thing I also know is we've put the bylaws, the 6-page proposed bylaws, we've put it on the website, and we've asked you to read it, and we've held some listening sessions, and I also know that probably 90% of you have not done that, because that's not a passion project for a lot of you to read boring organizational documents and some kind of organizational ease, and we're busy, right? So that's not a problem, okay? And if you have read them, amazing, thank you, all right? But I used to say to my students all the time, you cannot do your homework and still be a good person, okay? So if you haven't read the bylaws, it's not a huge deal. You can still be a good person. We're going to figure it out, okay? The other thing I heard this week really clearly is we need to quit. Language is very important in talking about this. And I need it, despite the fact I used to be a history, politics teacher, okay? I need to quit talking about this in a framework of government, using words that are related to government, because that brings people stress, because government isn't serving us very well right now, okay? And so if you feel some angst about that, there's a reason, and we need to validate that, okay? Luckily, we're not building a government. We're more like a tribe or a family who's just trying to decide in the future how we could broaden decision-making roles out a bit, okay? So instead of me talking about Doug as a benevolent monarch, I should be talking about him as a strong and capable and loving father, okay? But we're gonna spread the family decision-making out a little bit, okay? We have lots of people here capable of being loving, judicious, discerning parents of this community, which means a lot to us, okay? The other thing we don't have to worry about is there's no conflict in this community right now. We're all pulling for this transition. We all want this to work. We all love this place and understand the transition needs to happen. And at the same time, there's a lot of goodwill and cooperation coming to the question at this time. So I do want to shift our way of talking about it a little bit to validate those of you who might feel stress, and at the same time understand that we're moving forward. Now, another idea when you're feeling stress or concern is to slow down. We're going to slow it down. And I would love to slow it down and for y'all to have a million questions and for me to get to answer them all, because that would feed my ego. Because this is a passion project for me, and I have an invisibility wound. And so I love for people to pay attention to me. And so the idea of slowing it down and let's go really slow and let me talk you through every aspect of the bylaws would serve me extremely well. But this week when I explained that to some folks, they were like, no, we probably shouldn't do that. Instead, what we should do is help you understand that this is not, it's time to move forward, even if every single question in your mind isn't answered. Because our loving, strong, capable patriarch has some other things he could be doing to make the world great in the time he has left. And there's some other people who have incredible gifts who are ready to stand up. And so our fear should not stop that, okay? Instead, I should remind you that there's a lot of people with some incredible moral authority who are helping in this process, and it's not just me. okay? So in terms of the bylaws, the people who have given it their attention include people like Doug, like myself, like Michelle Carter. Oh my gosh, she took that draft and just like made it amazing. Our entire board, who includes Cherie, Drew, Christy Phillips, Matt, and then I've met this week with Sue, Jack, Heather. More and more people are starting to really get engaged, okay? And so if you're fearful or have some thoughts about it, one thing I would just encourage you to do is think about that there's a lot of people who you love and trust who are at the helm of trying to make this transition. The other thing I'd invite you to remember is everything we're doing is amendable, changeable. We're going to make our bylaws something that can change. So if we move forward and realize that we've made a mistake, we can fix it, okay? So that's another really important thing I wanted to let you know. All right, so if you, the last thing I want to do with the 30 seconds I have left is, well, two things actually, is one to show you a graphic. So I drafted this week, I'm a visual person myself. I tried to draft what the organization under the bylaws would look like. It's just a draft, okay? Cherie and I met yesterday, and we already know there's one tweak that needs to be made on it, okay? But you'll notice that the congregation is defined and bound by who's in the church directory. And it's up to you whether you're in the church directory. There's no coercion, or you decide when you want to be in the church directory, okay? And please get in it. It's important that you get in it if you want to, be a part of what's called the congregational body, okay? The elder leader is elected, and they manage the size of the directory. Because anybody in the congregation can create a petition or an invitation for the board to consider something that needs to be considered. And it only takes 10% of the number of people in the directory to do that. So if there's 200 people in the directory, it takes 20 of you to put something on the board's agenda and say, hey, you need to look at this. We are asking you lovingly to please consider this issue. Okay, so that's one way in which the congregation gets to place things of interest or concern on the board's agenda, okay? And then you can see that there's two standing bodies that always exist. One is the board, and the other one is the executive and paid staff. And then you can see that there's other groups that form and meet as needed, the elders, and there can be a board of appeals, okay? So maybe if you're, and you can see there's all kinds of ways in which there's discernment, feedback, decisions, always at work so that people have input, and at the same time we can make decisions and move forward with those decisions. And that decision making is distributed a little bit wider now. It's not within just a single loving, strong, capable patriarch. So I hope that helps. All right, the next thing we're doing is we've elected an elder leader, which is Cherie, and she needs to get some feedback from the elders. So we met yesterday, and she decided to do that. Cherie, can you help me remember? Sunday after church, April 28th. So if you have ever been paid to do work or labor at Common Thread, if you have led a core team, or if you... What's the third standard? I'm all of a sudden forgetting. Ever been on the board? Thank you, Scott. If you meet any of those standards, we are asking you to stay after church on April 24th if you can. That would be one way to help us get input related to the ratification of the bylaws. The second thing is we would like to do a Zoom meeting, and we would like some input. If you're an elder and you know you can't be there on the 24th, we need some input about whether you want that Zoom to be in the evening or during the day on a weekend. So think about if you meet the standard of an elder, you know you can't be there on the 24th. I'm sorry, the 28th. See, I'm telling you, we got to vest this in a lot of people's hands because one person alone can't hold it all in their head. Raise your hand if you would like that Zoom meeting to be during the week in the evening. Okay. If you're an elder who can't be there on the 28th, raise your hand if you'd like that Zoom meeting to be on a weekend during the day. Okay, there's two. All right. The third way you're going to, as an elder, have capability to give input on the bylaws is by just contacting Cherie directly. if you can't make either one of those when they are announced. Okay? And I think that's it. Hope this has helped us move the ball forward just a little bit. Okay, and that's the goal.
Next step, 28.
Yeah, next step is the 28th. Oh yeah, you have it.
Somebody told me this morning, my husband never comes to church, but he almost came today just to see how pissed off everybody got. The last couple of weeks, it has occurred to me, given the discussions that have gone on, that we could use a revisit of how to think about the Bible. We've seen over the last few weeks that it is, for many of us, irritating, irrelevant, for a few, maybe even harmful. So, a couple weeks about that. And we're going to start by thinking about the battle lines that have been drawn in our current social conversation about Gaza and Israel. Now let's see, we won't actually get to this part until next week. This week will be mostly context. Let's see if there is a way that the Bible could be helpful for us in this current seeming impasse in our way of thinking. My hope when this is over, if you are Bible yes, you'll be a little suspicious of your perspective. My hope is that if you are Bible no, you will be a little suspicious of your perspective. So you know how the battle lines are drawn. There are the pro-Israel people, and there are the pro-Palestine people, and they're not doing much talking to each other. Each one is pointing at the atrocities that have been committed by the other. Each one is dehumanizing the other, saying that to interact with those people, given the atrocities that they have done and the existential threat that they represent, that would be foolishness. Now, these people are not dumb. Some existential threat stuff has been going on, quite a bit of it. And that posture itself, we can't talk to those people because existential threat, that happens a lot. Israel and Gaza, Russia and Ukraine, political conversations, racial conversations, gender conversations. We can't talk to those folks because we have this truth, and it is really a true truth, and it's a really happened truth, so we can't talk to them. Then we put our truths into pithy talking points where we say things like, Israel is the only democratic ally we have in a very troubled region, and Israel faces existential threat, and Palestinians have been denied the basic right of a home, and Palestinians have been denied economic access, freedom of movement, and face existential threats every day. Or, Jewish people were promised the land by God. Or, Muslim people are also children of Abraham and have been promised the land by God. And each talking point that is articulated is the truth that has been seen by one group. And what seeing that truth does is eclipse in their vision any truth that the other might have seen. We see our true, and we see it at the exclusion of any other true. And then, once we do that, we just turn up the volume, because if they don't see it, it's probably because they didn't hear us. So let's say it a little louder, and then let's say it a little more forcefully, and then we just keep this cycle going and going and going. And stand back from Israel and Gaza for just a moment and look at that pattern, and you see that that pattern has become normalized in our society for sure. But that pattern has also become normalized increasingly at a global level. We even encourage that kind of thinking. We encourage that pattern. Because if you are working on a both-and solution, you are increasingly shouted down. If you are working on a both-and approach, you are increasingly drowned out. You are shamed into silence by your own group, or you're excluded, or you're voted out in the primary. So, only seeing the part has become the norm. And when we only see the part, we latch on to the righteousness of our cause around the truth that we see. And we do that, and this shit just keeps on going and going and going and going. So does the Bible have anything to say about that? And it turns out, yes. But to get there, I would like to start by exploring two American responses to this Gaza-Israel thing, both influenced by the Bible. But first, I want to introduce you to this guy, the prophet Mani, or Manny, probably wrong in the way that I'm pronouncing it, but Mani started the religion Manichaeism. Now, he was born in what is today Baghdad around the year 200. It's right there at the crossroads of the East and the West. Consequently, the religion that he started back in those days had little bits of Christianity and little bits of Zoroastrianism and little bits of Buddhism and little bits of Judaism and little bits of Gnosticism in it. But for us, the most important feature of Manichaeism was that it was shot through with dualism. It was actually founded on the premise of two-ness. It started with two gods, not one God. The God of light, and the God of light is a totally good God, and the king of darkness, which was a totally bad God. So equal gods who underwent this titanic struggle at the beginning of time, and out of that struggle, human beings came to be, which explains why we have a little bit of both inside of us, which explains why we struggle so consistently between good and bad. But more than us, Manichaeism insisted, history is a cosmic struggle. History is a cosmic struggle between good and evil, a cosmic struggle between the God of light and the king of darkness. Now, as a religion, Manichaeism failed. Dualism was, by history, soundly rejected. Antipathy toward the physical world that was embedded in that religion, the domain of darkness is the domain that we live in every day, that died out. After just a couple of centuries, the religion failed. But here's the problem. It didn't really die out. What it did was infect a whole bunch of other religions, especially Christianity. Quietly under the surface, never in the official documents, never in the official party line, more in our guts. Manny is still quite comfortably in our guts, still at work. So, there's that set of constructs, that set of instincts, that set of beliefs telling us what to do and how to do it. Telling us there is God and there is the devil. There is good and there is evil. There is us, good, and there is them, not good. So, start to grapple with anything that's complex, like historical influences, or the needs and the beliefs of other people, other groups, or of Palestine and Israel, of black and white, of red and blue, of men and women. And sure enough, Manny goes to work. Manny goes to work in the back of our brains telling us what to do, because good and evil, because cosmic struggle, because light and darkness. And today, how Manny shaped two very Christian views of the Israel-Palestine struggle. So listen, as I describe these two views, you're going to hear him. He's in there. View number one is democratic, God-gifted Israel is all good. Palestinian, land-usurping terrorists are all bad. Good, evil, light, dark, dualism. Now, this view got a whole lot more historical support about 1909 from this guy. His name is Cyrus Scofield. And what he did in 1909 was create a study Bible. And on the top half of that study Bible was the King James text of the Bible. And on the bottom half of every page was his commentary. And it came in a single, easy-to-carry volume, and it sold a gazillion copies because it met a very real need in American culture. Because we were at that time living at the very tail end of the Western frontier. And communities were still very far-flung and very rural and far away from anything, especially seminary education. So it was very difficult for ministers in local contexts to get on a train and to go all the way to and to be able to be apart from their farm and from their community for any length of time. So here comes a study Bible that says, we're going to give you some of the best resources you can get without actually going to seminary. So there it was, and it sold a gazillion copies, influenced a whole lot of preachers, influenced a whole lot of churches across the American landscape by meeting a very deep need. But it turns out, on the bottom half of every page, Manny was very, very influential. Now remember, sold a gazillion copies, influenced a gazillion preachers, a gazillion churches. Now the name for the framework that informed the notes that Mr. Scofield put in the bottom half of each page was called dispensationalism. And it says, God divided human history into several distinct periods of time. He called them dispensations. And each of those periods had a purpose, and each of those periods has a purpose currently. Because we live in the last one, he said, dispensationalism said. We call this period the end times. And what the Bible, dispensationalism tells us, what the Bible does is outline for us how history has been unfolding and how history is going to unfold. The Bible tells us what happened in the earlier times, and it tells us what's going to happen now in our end times. So the Bible then becomes a roadmap for understanding history. And since how it's all going to end is really important to us, that makes it really important that we understand how it's all going to end. And to understand how it's all going to end, there's one book in the Bible that is of particular importance, and that is the book of Revelation. Because if you go to that book, it's going to tell you this is how it's going to happen, this is what's coming, this is the way it's going to go. And it turns out that Mr. Scofield's notes on the book of Revelation have been profoundly influential in the American church, in American society, and even in American foreign policy. So you might have heard some of the highlights of the dispensational view of the end times. There's a rapture involved, there are tribulations, and there's a second coming, and there's a final judgment, and there's a new heaven, and there's a new earth. And a whole lot of American Christian energy has gone into trying to decipher all of those very cryptic prophecies in the Bible to try and figure out when and where and what and who. What are the timetables? When is the next part of the story going to drop? Who is the Antichrist? Who is the 10-horned beast? Who is the whore of Babylon? Because in those cryptic hidden prophecies, we are going to find out the promise of God is being realized in our time. The promise of God to redeem what has been so badly broken, to restore what has been so gravely injured. That is there promised to us in these books. Now, an interesting thing about timing historically is that Scofield's Bible came out just a few years before World War I. And World War I was a crushing blow to Western sense of hope. It wiped out our sense of optimism because how could things go so badly wrong? We had never had an experience where we were fighting a war in lines, but now we had the technology of a machine gun. So we could just stand boys up and we could just mow them down and just wiped out village after village after village. And we could not believe that something that heinous could unfold in human experience. And then here are Scofield's notes telling us These are the end times. And that becomes very resonant with that kind of felt pain deep inside of us, this war to end all wars, as World War I was called. So it became very easy for Americans to conclude, for Westerners to conclude during those very crushing times, I think this guy's right. I think maybe God is on the move. I think things are coming to a dramatic conclusion. I think God will repair our hopelessly broken world. And then, some 30 years later, Israel becomes a nation. And communist Russia becomes the 10-horned beast. And again, God is on the move, and history is coming to a conclusion. We are going to be restored. We are going to be redeemed. Hope once again. And so, given that the prophecies that we have found in the book so far all tell us that Israel is a key player in how history is going to unfold, we had better support Israel. And we had better stand with Israel because it is a cosmic drama. It's not just that nation in that place. It's a cosmic struggle between good and evil, a cosmic war between the God of light and the king of darkness. And it turns out that this little nation is key to how all of this drama unfolds. I grew up in that world. And I will tell you, the people in that world are not stupid. These are smart people. And they are devout people, and they are kind, and they are loving people. And they are committed to doing what's right people. And they have a hermeneutic. A hermeneutic is a set of rules for looking at and interpreting the world, and a set of rules for looking at and interpreting the Bible. Everybody has one. Everybody has a hermeneutic, and they came by their rules honestly. They got their rules for interpreting from Manny and Schofield. It is hard to overestimate the influence on all Americans, all American Christians, all Americans of these two. God of light, king of darkness. A cosmic struggle, winner takes all. Step outside of Christian thinking for a moment, and how often do you hear, we want to be on the right side of history. We want to be aligned with what is right and good. These ideas just permeate our consciousness, whether we are aware of Schofield or Manny or not. In this hermeneutic, an unwavering support for Israel is the right side of history, because Israel is on the side of the God of light. Therefore, Palestine, who is opposed to Israel, must be on the side of the king of darkness. It is not dumb. But it does operate from a very limited perspective. So, don't get all smug if you don't hold that view, because there's another view. The second view also has very limited perspective. In this view, the Palestinian cause is the fight for freedom. It is driven by Israel turning a blind eye for so many decades to Palestinian suffering and having taken on the role of imperialism at its worst. And so the Palestinian cause is all good. The Israeli imperialistic cause is all bad. Now, since the middle of the last century, the trend lines across the globe, particularly in the West, have been moving toward inviting in those who have been historically left out, freeing those who have been historically exploited. That's where the trend lines have been going since the mid-20th century, liberating the historically oppressed. And it has happened nationally as we have been grappling with race and gender equity as a nation, sexuality equity, and it's happening internationally as we've been unraveling colonialism. It is a trend line that has been moving. And in this second view, which is impacting both religion and society, there has been a heavily influential interpretation of the Bible, and it is called liberation theology. Now, what liberation theology says in essence is that Jesus and the kingdom of God are firmly standing on the side of the poor and the oppressed. We see that in the Bible all the time. There is a fierce commitment to caring for the poor, caring for those who are suffering, those who have no place at the table, being invited to a place at the table. It's a central message of Jesus. Stand with those on the margins and move toward those who hurt. Work toward a better society for more and more people, because God stands on the side of the oppressed. God stands for those who hurt. And it's pretty clear in this situation who is getting hurt more. Yes, there was a time, liberation theology would say, when the Jewish people were suffering more, and at that time the posture of the kingdom of God was to stand with them. But this argument continues, that tide has turned, and the kingdom of God now requires that we stand with Palestinians suffering against what has been cast as Western imperialism. Now, I know who I'm talking to, and I know that more of you would resonate with this second view than would resonate with the first. In fact, I suspect some might be thinking, wait a minute, there is nothing wrong with that second view. That is the right and true way. What else is there? Because again, people in this view also not dumb. There is a hermeneutic, and once we take that hermeneutic, this is a very sensible way of thinking about the world. It makes all the sense in the world once your rule for interpreting the Bible includes factoring in historical analysis, that the Jewish people were indeed being oppressed by Rome. They were indeed the outsiders, and all that Jesus said and all that Jesus taught was being stated inside this undercurrent of a struggle to be free of this external oppression. The view that sees Jesus' words through that lens, again, makes all the sense in the world. These people are not dumb. Start with a different hermeneutic, start with a different starting place, and we're going to see the world in very different ways. Now, for me personally, I share with many that second view has been much more helpful for me than the first. It has helped me see a bigger picture for many years. It has helped me see things that I had missed and blocked out because I had locked into a different way of thinking. But hold on just a second, because that pesky discredited prophet, he's in there too. I started noticing it first when I saw that those who were speaking on behalf of or for liberation theology were leaving out some really important stuff. I don't think intentionally. I think once our world is cast in terms of good and evil, light and dark, cosmic struggle, we just do selective seeing. We only see some things and not others. I noticed that the people who were speaking on behalf of liberation theology were not mentioning historical and religious and racial and social contexts, and were oversimplifying the very complex situation down to imperialists bad, freedom fighters good. A part of the true, but there was more going on, and sometimes delegitimizing the very historically based and security-based concerns of the evil ones, the imperialist ones, because, you got to, once imperialists are all bad. A good article that will help you understand some of the complexity of what's going on in this situation. What would you have Israel do? It was a New York Times opinion piece that came out a couple of weeks ago, and it says, if Israel does this, that's going to ruin everything. If they do this, that's going to ruin everything. If they do this, that's going to ruin everything. And you start to realize how complex this situation is. It is not simple, and it can't be just cast in terms of all good and all evil. It's a situation that doesn't lend itself to the very simple framing that the instincts given to us by the prophet Manny put into our guts. So when I saw the advocates of that second view doing that, it wasn't long before I noticed, oh, damn, I'm doing that too. And I began to see that once I am dead convinced that my view is the one and true view, once I know that I stand on the side of the God of light, and that anyone who opposes me stands on the side of the King of darkness, Sure enough, I started doing the same kind of thinking because it just comes up in our heads. I don't have to think anymore. I'm on the right side. I don't have to listen anymore. I'm on the right side. I can afford to be dismissive. I'm on the right side because I'm on the side of the God of light, and they must be on the side of the king of darkness. Now remember, Manichaeism was soundly rejected for a reason. Dualism is only a little bit of how the world works. It's not how the world works. Frame any situation in the terms of all good and all bad, and we are going to miss stuff. One of the things that I missed was that class struggle, yes, it's a very helpful construct, but it cannot contain the fullness of human experience. One of the things that we can easily miss is what Gandhi called the quest for the third way, the pro-pro way, pro-Israel and pro-Palestine, pro-you and pro-me, pro-us and pro-them. That's much more difficult, and it's very convenient not to have to go to that place that's much more difficult if we've got a God of light, and we're on the side of the God of light. We can even miss our tradition's deep commitment to nonviolence because, dead convinced that we're on the side of the God of light, when the other side behaves badly, behaves violently, well, maybe that's okay. Maybe that's just the price of doing business now. But the biggest critique of all three of all of those forms is that whenever we only see the part, we make the assumption that good can vanquish evil. And here's the thing about this. The Israelis are not going away, and the Palestinians are not going away. One is not going to vanquish the other. They are not like this cosmic struggle between the God of light finally driving out once and forever the king of darkness. Black and brown and white and red and blue are not going away. They will not be vanquished. That isn't what's going to happen. Now, we can avoid our stupid cousin with all of his stupid thoughts and not go to holidays at his house anymore because he's such a jackass. And we could do that. And sometimes you just have to do that because you can't do anything else. But if we do that, we have to realize we are not about the business of healing the world. What we are doing is acting on the advice of many. We are just living out a world that was prescribed by God of light, king of darkness. Light, me, will just stay away from dark, him, and did I mention it would be a good idea to head down the hallway at the end of the lesson and just sit in there on how to start depolarizing within so that I can actually talk to my cousin in a little bit bigger context. We have to start by depolarizing within because otherwise they are just on the side of the king of darkness. And the problem with that story is that it is just too limiting. It's not that there isn't truth in it. I bet you know the truth. I bet you know the truth about how dumb they are. I bet you know the truth about how wrong they are. I bet you know the truth. I bet you can quote and you could say, and you've got all kinds of pithy sayings to back it up. It's just not a big enough narrative to make the world any better than it is right now. That's not how we get from here to a better world, because we can't defeat, we can't vanquish, we can't overcome, we can't destroy. That's just not a big enough story. Manny was wrong. Oneness just is. And what oneness tells us is don't stay pro anybody. Stay pro. Don't talk to your friends about being pro anybody. Be pro. If we are not learning how to do that, if we are not moving into pro, we are not healing the world. We are not doing our small yeast, doing its small yeast thing part in healing the world. What we're not doing is we're not lighting candles in the darkness. Now you could, and I hope you will, write your congressional representative and ask your congressional representative to be pro. But let's be honest, how much influence is that going to have? Because the battle lines have already been drawn, and any congressional representative that starts thinking pro thoughts and starts taking pro action is going to get voted out in the next primary, because they will not be being loyal to their tribe. You could, if someone organizes a protest that would advocate pro-pro, you could attend, and I hope you would. But honestly, who's going to organize that protest? Because people don't get all worked up enough to go out to a protest for a pro-pro construct. That's just not what makes people angry. That's not what makes people, it's too complex, it's too difficult, it's too challenging. So odds are there isn't going to be a protest for you to go to where you can go be pro-pro. So what can we do? How could we light candles in the darkness? Last fall, I talked about our third of the width of a sheet of cling wrap lives. That's about how big a yeast is. But it is how Jesus talked about going from the world as it is to the world as we know it could be. And you don't do yeast on a global stage unless you live there. And we don't live there. We live in Raleigh. You live at your house. You live at your job. So, how do you do yeast where you live? Well, the key starts with understanding that you and I, we don't change the world. You and I, what we do is change a little bit of our world. And you and I begin to trust that 8 billion others of us are eventually going to come to the point where they do their yeast part. Because history tells us again and again and again and again, that is how change happens. Grassroots. It doesn't happen because of prime ministers and presidents. It doesn't happen because of congresses and parliaments. Those people act on what has already taken place when 8 billion of us look up and begin to change the way that we are doing our yeast thing. 8 billion yeasts doing their yeasty thing, and that is something that you can do, and that is something that I can do, and you can do it at your house, and you can do it at your job, and you could do it in your neighborhood, and you could do it at your kids' school. And what we do is we show up and we look for power differentials. We walk into our job and we ask ourselves the question, who does not have access? We look for anyone who is being excluded, who does not get invited to a place at the table, who does not get listened to, and we stand with. But we don't just stand with, we do it in a pro way. We try to understand the bigger picture, and we understand what's going on and why it's going on. Nobody likes bullies. Wait a minute, anybody? Anybody like bullies? Nobody likes bullies. But bullies are bullies for a reason. And we hardly ever ask what the reason is because we don't like bullies. We don't try and find out what's going on that's making the bully a bully. But how many movies have you seen where the kid's a bully and in the end he comes to a great insight because, oh my God, he's not loved at home or some such thing. We find out what's going on in a pro way, and we do that where we live. That's something you can do at your job. That's something you could do in your house. That's something you could do in your neighborhood. Now, that sounds like something that nice people would do. But it's a lot more than just nice people doing nice things. That's how we begin rewiring the neurons in our brains. And once we start rewiring the neurons in our brains, we see the world differently, and we become contagious. Now, Manny has got a lot of real estate in our heads already. He got a big head start. But we can start taking back that real estate in our heads by grappling with how we might approach our lives differently. How might we approach our homes and our jobs differently? How might we see the world differently? Do that, and that is a rerouting neurons way to become participants in a different way, very close to home, to change our world. So it could start with that irritating person in your neighborhood. What would pro-you, pro-irritating person look like? Nobody asks that question. We always have to ask the question, how do I get the irritating person to quit irritating me? But how would we work for the good of irritating person and the good of me? What would that look like? That's going to be some bushwhacking through neurons in our heads because we don't let our heads go there. That's not where our brains go. But that is where we're going to need to go if we're going to make a difference in the world. Asking the question, what's going on inside irritating person? which would mean getting close enough to be able to ask irritating person, which would mean becoming non-threatening enough in their life, which would probably mean learning how to do the loving kindness meditation so that we could earn the right to actually ask what's going on in irritating person's life. That's how we can yeast our way into a non-Manny world. And just with that one little illustration, irritating person, you see how difficult that would be. You see how that would require a deep change in our thinking. To do that, good thing we don't have to be in charge of the globe right now. Let's see if we can do that in our neighborhoods. That would be a good place to start. Now, here's what we're going to see next week. We're going to see that the Bible has a lot of wisdom and has a lot of guidance to help us get from here to there. So, indwelling divine, may we do the things that if we will do, will reroute our neurons, make us pro kind of people. Amen. Well, I'm going to dismiss those who are online. Here's a new picture to look at. There you go. Those of you online, here's what we're going to do in the room right now. We're going to open up the floor, and I'm looking forward to hearing what people have to say. You could do the same thing. We find it one of the best parts of our community, but odds are we've watched the numbers. You're time shifting, so you're not here on Sunday morning at 11, 12. There's another feature. First of all, next time, you might want to zoom in right after at this time slot, but also there's a link in the YouTube notes that says, you know what, I would be curious about what's going on with online community. I'd like to receive an email that would tell me what y'all are doing and how you're doing it, because what we're finding is we actually can build community in an online way. So those of you that are sitting on the couch at home in Raleigh, you might want to get involved in that too. Both of those links are there. When you go to the What Are You Thinking Zoom that's in the link there in the YouTube notes also, you'll need a password. That password is 1417. I hope you will go over there. I think you would find it valuable. But let's dismiss the folks who are online. If you would, please put your hand on your heart and remember as we go that we do carry the indwelling divine, every one of us. We say it all the time. That means that love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness are within us. That means the capacity to do pro, it's there, it's in us. It's hard, but it's there. And if you would extend your other hand to our city, let's look this week for opportunities to share what's already in us with the people that we live and work and go to school with, looking for opportunities to repair and heal our worlds. Amen. God bless you all. You were dismissed. We are not. And I am very curious what you're thinking. Oh, yeah, we do this. You run a skeleton crew the week after Easter. You might not know that.